What's going on, everybody? It's Novell J. Lee with the BUZZCast here at Buzzworthy Radio. I have another double feature for you today. We are joined by Bernardo Brito and SadieBones. First up, Bernardo, who wrote and directed the movie Omni Loop, stops by to talk about the premise of the film, and it definitely made me think about things. So to start off with, you have this woman who is stuck in a time loop, and she has to find a way to get out of it. She keeps going back in time because she's stuck there. And this part has a metaphor, but she does have a black hole in her heart. So, for me, when you think about it, if someone tells you you have a black hole in your heart, that means something's missing in your heart. There's something there that it's not going to be able to heal because you may have lost something that was close to you. Having the chance to talk with him about my interpretation and my thoughts on the film was very cathartic for me because it does have you ask the question, what if that were you? Would you want to relive your past? And if you did, would you change anything in it? And we got to talk about that. We got to talk about one of the scenes that really stood out to me the most, and also the acting in this film. This film stars Ayo Edebiri from The Bear and Mary Louise Parker. We also got to talk about how they joined the project as well. So here it is, our first interview of the show. Bernardo Brito. Check it out. Bernardo, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Not too bad, not too bad. So I am sitting here with Bernardo Brito, and we are talking about the movie Omni Loop, which I had a chance to take a look at. And for me, it was very interesting because of the themes associated with the movie, and it also helped with you had an incredible cast in this as well.
You know, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Mary Louise Parker, Ayo Edebiri. I mean, it's just it definitely gave me something to think about. And before I even get into my thoughts about the movie, let's talk about what exactly is it.
Yeah, Omni Loop is a movie about Zoya Low, who is a woman that's been diagnosed with a black hole in her chest, and she's got these pills that she can go back in time 5 days at a time, and so she's just reliving these last 5 days, and then she meets Paula, a young scientist played by Io, and decides that she's going to try to solve the secrets of time travel and go back in time and be the person that she always wanted to be and do the things she always wanted to do. And it starts from this kind of like high concepty sci-fi place, but really that's just a conceit for us to talk about, time and life and death and regret and memory and anxiety and self-loathing and all these things that make up being a person in the world. So that's really what the movie's about in a way, I think.
It it was just for me watching that in certain aspects. I don't want to give too much away for everybody because I want you guys to check this out. But it was just I looked at it and I just kept going. I don't know if I want to be, because I was asked this before, that person who would want to go back and try to fix things. um because I do look at it and go, if I had the opportunity to do it over again, I would not. And I can understand why we would have that notion of wanting to relive our past life, because we all made mistakes, we all did some things in our past history that we want to fix, that we regret and whatnot. But I feel like for me, those regrets and those mistakes made me better in who I am as a person now.
Yeah.
But it also, when you're looking at the film and you're looking at it in that perspective and you're wanting to go back, it's going like, oh my God, you're changing the course of your history. So it's also making me watch it in that angle as well, going, how is this now going to affect your life going forward?
Well, here's the thing too. It's like you talk about those mistakes and those regrets, and now you're looking back on it and you're like, yeah, those were good. They turned me to the person I am. But I wonder if right after those mistakes had happened, if you would have been like, yeah, I'll go back and redo this right now.
Sometimes I would say I would go back just to do it again. I would just want to be like not fixing that. I was like, yeah, let me relive that again. I just want to do
Yeah,
this
yeah,
all over
yeah.
again. So I'm
Right.
also I could also be that guy maybe. So
Yeah. Just stuck in the good times. Yeah.
just stuck in the good times. So I mean, honestly, when I heard about a black hole in her. I didn't really expect to see that. No, you weren't kidding. There's a black hole in her,
Not
and
just a metaphor. No, there's a black hole in there.
yeah, it definitely was a metaphor. But then you're seeing the images. I'll spoil that for you guys a little bit. You see like the MRI scan of her, and there's literally a black hole in her chest. And so I was like, wow, that's literally a metaphor taken to life. So I wasn't really expecting that. But
That's page one of the script. That's like minute one of the movie where it's like we're like boom.
yeah, when I saw that, I was like, "Oh, this is going to be interesting. Like, how do we explain this?" But it definitely was a little bit thought provoking. But I love the acting that was in this film from all the parties involved, and getting these two incredible actresses involved in this project. What was that? What was that like? How was that process and getting them on board?
Yeah, I was a fan of both of them. I was a huge fan of Ayo's just as a comedian, just from her podcast appearances. I always thought she was the funniest person ever. And um, Mary Louise, also just a huge fan of, had seen her on Broadway a couple times. Like if you ever have the chance to see her on stage, it's incredible what she can do. Um, and so I just thought they were both incredible and both would be really fun together, that they both had very different but similar energies in a way. And um, they have a great screen presence. You know, Mary Louise especially can have such gravity to her, but also can be very funny and very biting and acerbic. And I just thought they would have a, I don't know. As like a movie watcher, I was like, I would love to watch a movie with these two just hanging out, and so that's what I tried to make it happen. And then I was very grateful that they read the script, that they liked talking to me, and that we just went to Miami and made a movie. That it feels like a dream come true.
How long did it take for this project to get off the ground? And
Yeah, the script took years and years and years to write. I mean, I started writing in 2016. We were gonna shoot it in 2019, and then that fell apart, and then the pandemic happened, and so it was a long road to getting here. But similar to what we were saying earlier with the paths our lives take and the mistakes and all the regrets and all that kind of stuff, like if I had made the movie in 2019, that would have been a very different movie because I was a different person, but also it wouldn't have been with Ayo and Mary Louise, and I can't imagine this movie with anybody else. So the movie happened when it had to happen with the people that it had to happen with, and so yeah, I feel so fortunate and all that.
I love how that's now tying together with the theme of the movie. So that's awesome. And it's premiering this
This,
Friday, I believe is the date.
yeah, in theaters and on demand, and yeah.
That's pretty exciting to have this now be available for everybody because it's like I said, it's one of those things that's just going to make you sit there and go, what if that were me in that regard, when you're watching that. So you're watch I want to say this too, and again, spoiler alert, but there was a specific scene in here that I definitely wanted to comment on to you that
Yeah.
really it broke my heart, but I loved what Mary Louise Parker did in this scene, and it was the scene in the park.
Mm.
And just she was hearing everything in her head while she was on her knees on the ground in the grass.
Yeah.
And it was absolutely heart-wrenching, but it was just so well done.
I
If you can for a little bit before we wrap up here, talk about that scene in particular and just seeing that happen. What was that like for you being in that moment for her?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take a step back just for a second too and say that when I was writing that scene, I wrote probably the last 25 pages of the movie in one big burst, and they all kind of came out. And I remember writing that scene specifically and crying as I was writing, which is the only time that's ever happened to me. And I remember thinking, if I can just preserve this emotion somehow, like the audience will feel it too, because I remember feeling it so strongly then. And then it all seems so scary because you got special effects and you have the actors and you're like, I hope that this all like will translate in some way. And then you just say action and Mary Louise just goes for it. And I just feel again like lucky to have her in my movie because she makes everything work so much better than it would have just on the page or that it would have with some other actor. Um, we talked a lot about that scene beforehand, And I think the way she likes to work is not necessarily having a target to hit, but just having a launching pad to go from. She likes
Mhm.
discovering something in the moment and seeing where the scene will go. And I knew we weren't going to be able to do too many takes of that scene because it's a very intense scene. And yeah, she just went for it, and it was really special to watch on the day. There was a number of scenes throughout the movie that on set, I'm behind the monitor and I'm just like crying, sobbing. That birthday scene at the end, I'm just like,
The birthday scene. Yep.
so it's there's not to spoil too much stuff, but there's a lot of kind of stuff that really hit me emotionally and hit me personally. Hopefully that stuff translates to an audience because I felt it when I wrote it. I felt it when Mary Louise acted it on set, and yeah, hopefully people feel it when they watch it at home or in theater.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. This was definitely an intense, gut-wrenching scene for me, and like you said, this was one of those that hit very hard and close to me, and I thought this was just very well done and a very intense
Yeah,
scene.
can I also just give a quick shout out also to Hannah Pearl and Carlos Jacob, who plays her daughter and her husband in the movie, and Hannah especially, that voicemail is just heart wrenching to listen to. But anyway, I just think
Absolutely, and definitely, it was like I said, this was just a poignant scene, and I loved every aspect of it. But definitely wanted to get that in here before we wrapped up here, and I really appreciated the time. Can't believe it already flew by to talk with me about this. This was great. The movie was great, and hopefully everybody gets the chance to check it out. Omni Loop premieres this Friday in theaters and video on demand. Bernardo, I really appreciate it that you stopped by and talked with me about it today.
thank you so much, and yeah, I appreciate all the kind words and thoughtful questions.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Bernardo Brito, for stopping by and talking to us about Omni Loop. The movie actually premiered this past Friday, September 20th, at theaters and video on demand. So make sure you guys check that out. You guys will enjoy it. Next up is our interview with SadieBones. A little bit of trivia for you guys. She is the daughter of Kevin Corrigan, and he starred in one of my favorite underrated sitcoms, Grounded for Life. And we talked to her about the movie If That Mockingbird Don't Sing. And she gave us some insight into that movie as well, which I thought was pretty cool. And she's one of the youngest directors to direct a film. And we got a little bit into about how, while we do talk about needing new blood in this industry, we also got to look at it from a standpoint of you have people that are a part of this industry that grew up within the industry because they had family being a part of this. So they learned from the best. So why not have someone who was a teenager, and we talked about her celebrating her 20th birthday with the premiere too. Basically taking this on, and I mean, I've seen teenagers direct sitcoms. Why not with films? Let's get some more blood in here. So we got a little bit in depth in there too, which I thoroughly enjoyed. Here it is, our interview with SadieBones. Check it out.
Hi.
How are you?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you. Thank you so much for taking a few minutes out of your day to talk with me today. Really appreciate it.
So much for having me.
I appreciate that as well. So guys, SadieBones, did I say that right?
Yes.
She is joining us right now, and we are going to talk a few minutes about If That Mockingbird Don't Sing. Um, well, first of all, how did the film come into creation? That's how I wanted to ask it.
Um, you know, I was about to finish my 2-year conservatory at the Lee Strasberg Institute. I had just finished, I had finished like high school at 16. I had just turned 18.
Mhm.
I didn't really know where I was gonna go from there. And it really kind of started out as like a diary entry, of like venting all my feelings about the past few years and what was like my coming of age kind of, and feeling super lost and feeling like I didn't know where to go next. And it started as that. And my friend Ava related to it a lot, and she encouraged me to make it bigger, and it just grew from there until it became what it is now.
without giving too much away, can we talk about exactly what the film is about? So, can you give us a brief synopsis of it?
So it's about this teenage girl named Sydney who, right after graduating high school, finds out she's pregnant with her ex-boyfriend's baby, who has left her to date other girls in college, and she decides to keep it so that he'll come back.
Oh, so okay, interesting. Wow, I did not pick that up. Well, I got the synopsis. I think I did not get to that part of the synopsis of the movie. That is basically why she keeps the baby. So
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
really where my surprise face came from. So that was a nice little shock for me, guys, everybody. So
Yeah.
but this is premiering on the 22nd of this month.
It's premiering September 22nd, 7 p.m. at the Village East by Angelica. It's also going to be on my 20th birthday, so it's going to be a party. It's going to be fun.
Well, happy early birthday. And how did you get into the film making business or aspect of it? Because your father, I know he has been very heavily involved in independent filmmaking as well. So did the torch get passed on to you, basically?
Yeah, in a way it did. I've wanted to be a filmmaker as long as I can remember, really before I even kind of could grasp what my parents did for a living. I knew that I wanted to tell stories because, I was raised in a really, really artistic household. My dad, was showing me independent movies from the time that I could understand English.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's definitely how I got into it.
The one thing I definitely like to bring up about independent filmmaking, especially since I started having people who were in or somewhat worked on, it doesn't have to be in, they were working on independent films. Um, you can tell how much love that they have for what they put into whatever film it is that they are making. And that is one of the best things I ever came across when I started talking to people in this business, because you don't get to really see a lot of that, whether it's in a big budget production, whether it's in a television show. You get to see that they put all of their time and effort and energy into it. It's a labor of love, and especially with independent films. Yes, you may not have the big budget, you may not have the big money for it, but it's such a worthwhile story.
Yeah, it was definitely a passion project for me. And, that love was felt. I transformed my childhood bedroom to be the bedroom of the main character. We painted it purple
Mm,
and decorated it. But, it's still like my childhood bed is the bed in the movie. And, it's my friends and my family and my teachers who are acting in it. And, it's my childhood best friend's house we shot in, our neighbor's house we shot in. It's very homegrown and like definitely a passion project for all involved, especially because, I was only 18 when I directed it. So getting my producer on board, for example, she sees a script and she's like, the writer director is 18. I don't know if I want to do that. But she really liked the script and signed on because of that. Yeah, but a leap of faith from a lot of people.
you mentioned, well, first of all, there's two things. You mentioned that this is going to be premiering on your 20th birthday, but you just also hit on the fact that you were 18 when you first directed this film. And already it came off that there was at least someone who felt a little bit of hesitancy and resistance to directing it, because uh, um, producing it, I should say, not directing it, because you had such a young director involved in this film. Um, I think I only heard of it one time prior to this, and it's escaping me what the show was, but there was someone who I believe, and I think it was a Disney show at the time, who directed an episode, and they were only 15, 16 years old. Um, with that hesitancy, did you did you come into this when you were about to direct this film? Some in your own head, were you hesitant? Were you scared? Were you, terrified? Or did you actually come into this going like, I know what I'm doing. Let's get this going. If we can get somebody on board who also sees the passion and the labor of love like I do with it, let's go. But was there also that sense of hesitancy on your part?
I've always been precocious. I left high school and got my diploma when I was 16 because I was ready to go out into the world. And there was never really a point where I was like, I'm too young to do this
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like, you know, I feel like my brain is hardwired to direct and to write, which maybe is just a nicer way of saying I'm very bossy. But I also think that like it should be more accessible. I think that every single person has a story to tell. And whether you're 18 years old or you're 80 years old, I think that everyone has a worthwhile story to tell. And I would love to see more of them represented on screen. And especially like I was frustrated by the lack of new movies that felt authentic to like Gen Z and felt authentic to young voices. And I figured, someone's got to do it. Someone's got to put it out there because, like, I know I would want to see it. And I'm sure that, there are many, many, many much more underserved groups that deserve to have their stories out there as well, told by someone who gets it.
It's funny you said that about how it doesn't even have to be movies, but it could be any type of series, any type of film, any type of something where it doesn't accurately represent a certain group. And I hate saying this, guys, but I have to say it because she brings up a very good point. We said that for someone who is a person of color, rarely have we found a lot of films or television shows in recent years that accurately depicts people of color. And I totally understand why you're saying that there's not, at least in your knowledge, anything that's accurately depicting Gen Z, because we always, if you see it in anything in social media or any type of online platform, Gen Z gets knocked, and we don't necessarily know exactly what a Gen Z is. Like we know what it is by quote unquote definition, but really what is a Gen Z and how do we know exactly what a Gen Z does? So I think it really makes sense that you said that because I am a millennial. If you're going by the actual definition, I am a millennial. So you could probably, in essence, look at me and go, "Oh, you're a millennial. Well, you're this type of person," and they could easily come at me in some type of way. But really, I'm not what you would consider a millennial. So it really makes sense that you brought up that point. So thank you for calling that out.
I also just think that like film is such a gift because you really get to show people what the world looks like and sounds like through your eyes, and I think it's easier to empathize with someone or understand them because you basically get to see the world from their perspective. And I think that, if being able to write and direct movies was more accessible, I think the world would be a lot more of an empathetic place.
I think, and if anybody ever watched any of these shows through the lens of the creator, director, the writer, I think, as you said, I think it would be a whole different ball game that we are living in on this earth. And, you know, it's such a stigma, especially if you're looking at it from the scope of young directors, people of color, women in this field. It just doesn't seem like they get the respect that they richly deserve. And that's another reason why I asked that question was because we have grown up in an era, unfortunately, seeing how much people tend to not really want to watch movies that are done by a certain group of people. And as you just said yourself, I think it needs to be more of this in in this scope of reality when it comes to filmmaking. Um, even we talk about with the young directors, I'm going like, well, we have young actors. We have actors that started in this business at 3. Some of them started as soon as they were born. So if you're telling me that they could be, if that's okay with you for them to start in this game at such a young age as an actor, why can't we do that as a director?
Yeah.
Especially if you are coming in this thing where you have family that's been in this business for so many years. I mean, listen, I loved your father on Grounded for Life. I was a huge fan of that show, and I have to tell you, I feel that show was very underrated. Very underrated.
I agree.
And it was one of the best shows that I watched on the then WB. And yeah, I loved watching it every Friday night. I really did. And like I said, very underrated. It should have gotten a lot more love than it got. But in that, but going from that with him, Kevin, and being in this entertainment field, and you basically being around this, he is showing you everything when it comes to the entertainment industry and independent films and whatnot. It makes, to me, I'm going like, well, this makes sense if you have somebody, no matter what the age is, that they're coming in and directing because they've lived this, they know what it's like, they know the ins and outs of the business, and they also have their own story to tell. And I think that's really what should it be. It should be about that. They have the story that they want to tell, and the story's good. The story's on paper, it's good. You got the people who's acted the parts out. It doesn't matter who's directing it. As long as you have the story, everything else falls into place.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like there are so many stories to be told, and also like, being the director too, like I think that more people are capable of it than they realize. Not that it's not a hard job, and not that like it doesn't take talent and hard work, but I think that people count themselves out because it's so hard to get into. Um, and they shouldn't. And and more opportunities should be made for them. And I'm incredibly, incredibly lucky
Mm.
that this was able to happen for me. Um, and I hope that it inspires others to, take that chance, or inspires like more producers to take chances on unknown and maybe risky people because they have something to say. And I mean, based on the response to our film so far, it's really resonated with a lot of people. And I definitely get a kick out of like, it'll show at a festival and people don't know how old I am. And then I show up and they're like, "You're a little girl." And things that maybe seem important to at the beginning and seem like iffy, they d people don't even know because a good movie is a good movie.
A good movie is a good movie. And you hit the nail on the head with everything that you just talked about. And I feel like that is the frightening thing about it for those that want to start in this business. They are afraid to get into it because of that rejection aspect of it. And we're not giving them a chance because you have to be this age or you have to be this ethnicity or you have to be this etc in order for you to get your start in this business or at least get your foot in the door, we'll say it that way.
Yeah.
And as you said, everybody has a story to tell, I feel like, that wants to branch out into this business. And if we open up those floodgates to let them in so they can tell the story, one of the things we've said majority of the recent years is we love original content because a lot of things that we started seeing are remakes or revivals. And don't get me wrong, some of them have been good, some of them have been great, and we accept them, but we don't necessarily want that all the time. We
Yeah.
want fresh content, we want fresh stories, we want new ideas. And if we're not going through our pick of the litter in order to bring these worthwhile people in to give us these new ideas and fresh faces, this is what we're going to be stuck with. So I just, for me, I don't understand why we've never ever wanted to accept new blood in the game here. And
I mean, and beyond that too, like, okay, maybe if someone is young, you give them the support they need to thrive, especially like I think we should have more disabled people making movies. I think that we should have more LGBTQ people making movies, and not because they're disabled or because whatever, but because they have a story to tell.
mhm,
And okay, maybe, if you're, for example, deaf, maybe it's hard for you to direct in the traditional sense. Okay, then we need to make the resources, make the way for them to be able to do it. Because I want to know what things are like from their point of view. And I think that the rest of the world does too, if we just give new people a chance.
I mean, perfect example, Marlee Matlin. I mean, she's been in this business for a long time, granted. However, think about what you just said. Somebody who is deaf and is on that set, it may not be the traditional way of directing. You gotta make the resources in order to make it happen. Work with her, not against her. And I know she definitely has picked up the tricks and everything on how to do it. But just think of someone else new coming in. Think of somebody who wants to actually get into this business who is deaf and they actually have someone that they could respond to and look up to. You have that with her. If you have her in a directing scope, if you have her in a writing scope, if you have her producing something, something along those lines, and this one person is just sitting there on the other side of the coin and is now going, I can do that too. My disability is not an inability.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, for me, like Quinn Shepard is an inspiration to me. She directed her first feature as a teenager as well. And like having people like that and then seeing how her career has grown since then, I think it's also just so important to feel like you're not a novelty. Like, yes, I am a teenage director, but like it's not a novelty act. It's not like
Hmm.
I still want to be recognized as like real filmmaker.
A real
Having
filmmaker. Yeah.
having her have paved the way for me a little bit was really helpful to feel like I was being taken seriously.
It's like when you said that, I'm going like, yeah, I'm a teenage director. I'm like, no, you're a director. And I
Yeah.
think that's how people need to look at that. They should not put the teenage part in front of it. No, I'm a director. Case closed.
Yeah. And I mean like I I bring with me the perspective of being a young person and being Gen Z and everything else I am, but so does everyone. So does everyone.
Everybody's going to bring their fresh take on something. When you give them an opportunity to come to the table with it, everybody's got, as we said numerous times during the course of this interview, everybody has a story to tell, and we just got to give them the opportunity to tell that story. You mentioned it perfectly that this movie, it resonated with a lot of people. And if we get those filmmakers, those thinkers, those idea makers that come into the fold to share their own perceptions and give us a story through their lens, this is going to resonate with a lot more people and get more people talking. And it's just a matter of opening the door.
Yes.
No matter who you are, we just got to open that door for those creatives and those talented humans to come in and tell those stories. And hopefully that continues to happen. But this is another reason why I love independent films, is because they get that opportunity to shine like that. And while we, yes, want it for big budget releases and whatnot, working in independent films is literally a whole different ball game. You get to finally tell that story behind the lens. You get to see a side of this where it's industry. How do I say this? How do I end that on a big way? You get to see a side of industry where you necessarily may not get with a big budget, but you're going to get a lot more respect.
Mhm. it's definitely like it's family and it's people who really believe in it. It's not people who are there showing up for a paycheck. It's people who are there because they want to be there. And I think that matters.
It definitely does.
There are certainly like plenty of movies that maybe wouldn't be to my taste if I was sitting at home wanting to like bed rot. But
Hmm.
the story behind the story compels me so much that when I see the movie, it is in a whole new light.
Absolutely. Now, when we talked about it premiering on the 22nd, let's go over again of where they'll be able to see it.
It will be premiering the New York City premiere September 22nd, 7 p.m. at the Village East by Angelica. It's the closing night film of the Soho International Film Festival.
Oh my gosh. So before we wrap up, I gotta ask, what was your reaction like at the fact that it was going to be a part of the Soho International Film Festival?
I mean, I'm a New York City native of my home, so it means so much to me to have it finally play here. I grew up in Tribeca, so it's like, it's my hometown, it's my people, it's my teachers and my childhood friends and my family, and it means so much to me.
I appreciate you taking time out of your day to talk to me. This was fun for me because I love whenever I get the chance to get on my soapbox about something passionate and bringing out this type of a conversation with the other person. It's the most fun for me. And I really appreciate getting not just the fact of you talking about this film with us, but also talking about everything else surrounding the film, as well as our thoughts and ideas of how we can make this industry process even better. And it was a lot of fun for me. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, and I really enjoyed it as well. I think that this conversation needs to be had more and louder.
It needs to definitely be had more and be louder. I would love to have you back on any time and we can talk about this even more. But yeah, I completely agree. This is a conversation that needs to be discussed even more than what we just did within the past 25 minutes. So I completely and utterly any independent filmmakers, please come on this show. I would love to talk to you more and watch your films and review them and talk about the fact that this is important. This is important that we need to support the indie filmmakers. We need to support them because they're getting the chance to do something that they love that they may not be able to do in another type of landscape.
Absolutely.
So SadieBones, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun, and again, we love to have you back on anytime. The door is open.
Thank you so much.
I want to thank both of my guests, Bernardo Brito and SadieBones, for stopping by the BuzzCast. Hopefully, you guys get to check out their movies, Omni Loop, and If That Mockingbird Don't Sing, at your local theaters and on video on demand. You guys will not regret it. So thank you both again for stopping by the show and talking with us about it. But that's going to do it for me for right now. I'm Devel J. Lee, making sure you keep getting the latest buzz with Buzzworthy Radio by logging on to our website at www.buzzworthyradiocast.com. You can also follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Buzzworthy Radio, and liking us on our Facebook page. I'm also on Instagram at BuzzNav, and you can download and stream our podcast on Amazon Music and iHeartRadio. We'll see you guys next time. Take care.